El estudio Spitzer. Entrevista con el Dr. Robert Spitzer, acerca de su estudio sobre los cambios en la orientación sexual. En febrero de 2004, entrevisté al Dr. Robert Spitzer, acerca de su estudio sobre la gente que había reportado cambios en su orientación sexual. En este vídeo, el Dr. Spitzer describe el propósito de su estudio, y las razones por las que les creyó a los participantes, y acerca de lo que ahora sabemos sobre los cambios en la orientación sexual.
So the real purpose was to see whether it was true that essentially no one could change. Now, it was not a study of how often people can make that change, but it was a study of whether there are some people who can make a change in more than just how they view themselves, but also in their fantasy and their arousal. I developed a very systematic, structured interview, which I think is much more methodologically sound than in previous studies, because most previous studies, they have one or two measures of homosexual, heterosexual attraction. We had 9 different measures which we used. We used various scales, and it was, I think, methodologically quite superior. What we found was that there were significant changes, and we also sent questionnaires to, many of the people were married, and we sent questionnaires on marital adjustment to their spouses, and they, by and large, reported quite good functioning. So the real issue, or one of the major issues, is can you believe these people? And the study has been criticized on the grounds that, well, these were people who had a particular viewpoint, and all they're doing is justifying their claims, and they've either lied or deceived themselves. So one of the major criticisms is, well, okay, these people have said something, but how do we know it's actually true? And there's no easy answer to that. When I listened to them, I had the kind of clinical feeling that these people were telling me the truth. But there may be some that were exaggerating. It's hard for me to believe that all of the people who reported change, and they all reported some change, some not very much, many disappointed that they had not changed more. So why do I think that it's believable? One is that they didn't report absolutely total change, which I think, you know, if you're going to exaggerate, maybe you would exaggerate more. In addition, the marital adjustment that the spouses, mainly women, what they said about their marriage and what the individuals said about their marriage, we used a marital adjustment scale where we had norms, so we knew what a community sample generally reports. Now, you would think if these were people who wanted to, you know, give a good story, that they would report better than normal or better than usual, better than average social functioning, and they didn't. They were just about the same. So I think that also makes me think. In addition, when they talked about the therapy, what went on in the therapy, for a small number, it was very religious, dramatic religious experiences. I remember one woman said that in the middle of, she was having sex with her lesbian partner, and all of a sudden she heard Jesus say, "What are you doing?" But that was relatively rare. Most of the changes seem to be, you know, associated with the usual things that one hears about in psychotherapy. People talking about their background, their family, how they felt, you know, in terms of masculinity, femininity. So it seemed believable to me. Now, the other issue is the study has been severely criticized on the grounds that it will give a false impression that change is easy and that it's common for people who go into this kind of therapy to make this change. Now, of course, the study was not a study of how often, because we only started with people who claimed that they had made a change. My own sense of this is that we had a great deal of difficulty getting those 200. It took us about 2 years. And we had several sources of where we could make it known that the study wanted people who had changed to participate. Since it was so hard to get those 200, and we were not flooded with hundreds of people, my own view, and there's no way that I can be sure, is that it is probably a relatively rare experience that people change as much as these people did. It's also important to realize that even some of the people that we did not accept because they had only changed in their behavior. There were some people who didn't, they said, well, I've become heterosexual because I know now that I am, God made me this way, but I still have homosexual feelings. Right? Even those people who we did not admit into the study, many of them felt that by controlling their homosexual behavior, which made it possible for them to live a life more in tune with their own value, religious value system, was very valuable. So what we conclude, or what I conclude, is that change is on a continuum. It probably is not nearly as common as some of the therapists who do this. There aren't that many, I think, these days. There probably were many more 20, 30 years ago. But I've asked two of the more well-known practitioners of this kind of therapy, how often are they successful? And they say, well, depends on how you define success. But if you define it in terms of really a change in behavior and in feelings, both of them said about 30%, something like that. Now, I suspect it's much lower, but I could be wrong. So whether it's 2%, 10%, 15%, but what I am sure is that it's not 0%. And that's essentially what the study was about, whether it's really 0%.